What's up guys, it's Minx, and in the last video I asked for suggestions on what videos you'd like to see, and today we're going to start going through those. This one's going to be a two-part video because it's a little long otherwise. I wanted to make sure that I thoroughly went through everything that was relevant to this one, so that way it could actually be learned from rather than just, here's the answer, you're not going to learn anything to be able to use this anywhere else. So I want to be able to actually take something from this and apply it somewhere else. That way it's not useless. So with that said, we're going to be looking at decrypting the save files for Lethal Company and then re-encrypting them after the fact. So to start, we need to figure out what's going on. How is it encrypting them? What is it doing? What password does it use? What type of encryption does it use? Is there anything else we can figure out? So we need to go through the game code and figure out how it's doing that. That's going to be the first thing we need to do, and that's going to be this video. We're gonna go through it. We're gonna research it. I'm gonna really cut down the research. It took me a while to research this because I had no idea. I had no experience, and if I could figure out with no experience, my only experience being my previous experience with coding in general, which to be honest, it's not a lot. It's all self-taught, just messing around. I wanted to try something, so uh, I should be able to explain things and walk through things in a way that makes sense to most people here. So, just like in the last modding tutorial video, we're going to open up Lethal Company and ILSpy, Dnspy, or whatever else you prefer. So let's go ahead and I'll just open. Um, you can use the exe or you can use C#. I'm going to try the exe here, just curious. Looks like it opens up this. If the exe doesn't work or you just know it's not going to work, you can go into data, managed, and assembly C#. That's okay. So um, first thing we need to look for is, so we need to understand when files are encrypted and decrypted. Generally speaking, they're encrypted or decrypted like on the drive. Always when you read from a file, like when you read and decrypt from a file, it usually does it in memory, and then when it writes it back, it writes the encrypted stream back to the file. So we're never going to see like a decrypted file on the drive. We may see it in RAM, for example, right into memory when it's done. So we want to see when that happens because um, if it's poorly written, which I can tell you it's not in this case, it's not like just it's not secure by any means, but it's not like plain text every time he calls a load or a save or whatever that it spits out the password. Um, what we can do is look for what one of those happens so we can kind of see what it's using, because then if we figure out how it works, we can figure out where the password is set or how to get it. So when are these things called? There's a few times. Firstly, at the main menu, I know there's general player save data, which is also encrypted because it uses the same system. um, so there's the general data, which is settings like audio settings, graphic settings, stuff like that. There is the save files, which when you start a game, it loads from a save, which means it has to decrypt at that point. So we've got a few options right there. So that tells me that the main menu is probably a good place to start. So we could scroll through this list and find it, but that is, I mean, we could say main menu. Main menu is going to be in the M's. Let's see, manual, map, match, menu manager. Okay, menu manager is probably going to be it. We could also just hit the search button and search menu. You can search maybe main menu. Looks like main menu doesn't really, comes up as like an input system. But that's from Unity, so that's not going to be super useful. We could also search things up like save. This kind of gives us an idea. I could tell you now that the ES3, I wish if I knew this ahead of time, I would have figured this out very quickly. But it uses ES3. We're not going to cheese that though. We're still going to go as if we didn't know that ES3 was relevant here. But there's a lot of stuff going on here, and most of it's not relevant. There might be one or two lines in here that are relevant, if that. So we're going to skip this. And we're going to go to menu manager, see if there's anything here. If there isn't, we're going to move on. Now, we're in here. We can scroll through all this stuff. Again, scrolling through is super boring. I really don't feel like doing it. So just Control F. And we know the name of the save files. We know that it could be saving them or loading them. So we could just type in the word save. and it looks like save comes up. Load would have also worked, es3.load. So we have all this stuff here. We can definitely see at this point 100% that ES3 is being used for this stuff. ES3.save, ES3.load. So let's go ahead and click on ES3. Now, it should pop up with something under the assembly C# first pass. If it doesn't, you can go in and manually get that. But it should. I've never had it not pull it up, even when it wasn't like showing up on the left here previously. It would pull it up at that point. So anyway, ES3. So what does this stuff look like? So we got ES3, autosave manager, cloud, default files, all this stuff. It's definitely what's being used, but we don't know anything about what's going on. And again, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Like, I really didn't want to scroll through all this. It's not all relevant either. Like, who cares about copy directory, rename directory? These are just, these are these are just pulling stuff through here. Like, no. So what I did was, well, there's the thing we use there, but let's see, ES3 Unity. So the first thing I did was search up what the heck ES3 was, because I had no idea. And we get a few things. We see es3.load, which immediately tells me this is what was being used, but we also see like this Unity asset store thing, this easy save, the complete save data and serialization system, and this is definitely what's being used. So let's go ahead and take a look at the MoodKey stuff. So MoodKey is the one that made ES3 or whatever. So this kind of tells us, what's going on here. So we can move on to the password. So let's see, documentation. Let's go to the scripting API. Let's see here. So when I started, we could do like password encrypt. Here we go. This is literally my history on this thing. Encrypt, ECB, AES, EC. Trying to figure out what this thing does. So just search without the and this tells us a lot of stuff. So ES3 settings, encryption type, ES3 settings, password type. So it looks like ES3 settings is going to be super relevant here. And we can even get an encryption guide. Wow. Okay. So EasySave supports AES encryption with a 128-bit key, which can be enabled in default settings or by using an ES3 settings object as a parameter. So, one of two things. It has a default. Not one of two things. It has a default. The default can be overridden via code using an ES3 settings object. So an ES3 settings object has to be created. It uses a 128-bit key and it uses AES encryption. So already we know a lot about how this works, and we have a few different ways we can try and get the password. Firstly, we could try and find in the code where this is set. And I'm going to tell you now, I looked for it. I could not find it. I don't know where it is, because if it's somewhere that doesn't make sense, or it's in a reference somewhere. I don't know. I couldn't find it, so I kind of gave up looking for it. It is what it is. We don't need it. We can make it happen. So the way ES3 loads settings, even if you were to create a second ES3 settings object, it will load those same settings as the other one. So it kind of sets, I think the way it works is when you set a new settings object, it sets the defaults, and then when you create a new one, it takes those defaults and sets those to the default of the ES3 settings. So that's good. So what we can do is create a new ES3 settings and then have it print out our password for us, and that'll tell us what we need to know. So let's go ahead and figure out how to do that. It's not that hard to figure out. We can already see right here it says to create a new settings. We don't even need to define this stuff because we're just going to use the defaults at that point, which are what the game developer set, and then we just print it out. So pretty straightforward. The other information, such as the AES and the 120-bit key, we'll use in the next video to determine how to decrypt it. We'll also look at look at the algorithms that it uses. So we got everything we need from that part. Let's go ahead and get the password now. So I accidentally flashed this earlier, which is fine. It's Unity Explorer 4.9.0. So what this is it's a really good tool for modding. It allows you to pretty much inspect and do a lot of different things with Unity games. Um, they have BepInEx, Melonloader, IL2CPP, and Mono. So they support pretty much everything. In this case, I'm using BepInEx, and we're on BepInEx 5. So that's the one that I would recommend downloading, unless you know you're on a different version, such as on Melonloader. If you're on Melonloader, you still want to make sure you do the Mono, because this is not an IL2CPP game. So get the correct one downloaded. And if you're on BepInEx, that's the one I'm going to show. This is going to be what your root folder looks like. You can drag the plugins folder directly into the BepInEx folder, or you can go into the plugins folder and drag the Sinai Dev Unity Explorer folder into plugins. So your plugins folder should look like this. You can have other mods, but it doesn't really matter. It only comes with 2 DLLs, but once you run the game, it'll generate these other folders and files. But this is what your plugins folder should look like. Once you have that in, you can actually go ahead and run your game. And while this is loading, just want a real quick reminder. Again, this research that I'm showing you, like that I went through, is like significantly shorter than what I actually did. I started working on this a day or two after the game released, and it didn't release until a week after the game was out, at least. So I didn't just immediately know the stuff or find out or have all that information. I didn't have a lot of experience. I had to do a lot of reading and watching and all that good stuff. So anyway, if you've done everything right, you should have a screen that looks something like this. Might be slightly different, but you should have this thing at the top. If something's wrong, drop a comment down below. I might be able to help. I'm not too familiar with the mod or troubleshooting it. Make sure you're on the correct BepInEx version. Make sure you downloaded the correct version of the mod. That's all I got for you right now. Otherwise, so once you're in here, let's go ahead and open up the C# console. C# console is going to allow us to actually write code. So you could do it this way, or if you really wanted to go wild for no reason, you could quite literally make your own mod that on startup, it like, on mod awake, it creates an ES3 settings object and prints out the thing that you need. No need to do that. We can just go ahead and write it in here. It's a lot easier, right? So we just need essentially 2 lines of code. So like I said, we need to make a new ES3 settings object, which is called ES3 equals new ES3 settings. This will create a new instance of the ES3 settings with the default settings that are currently set, which means it's going to have access to the password that the developer has set to be the default. Then we can go ahead and say, we can print it out or send it to a file. We're just going to do debug.log and no quote there. And we'll say ES3 dot encryption password. If I can type. Okay, so make sure you have this log Unity debug to green, otherwise it won't output anything. And we hit compile. And keep in mind, there's no autocorrect here or anything like that. So make sure capitalized are correct. Make sure everything's set up correctly. Otherwise, it'll error out. And we can see here it outputted LCS slime 14A5, which is the password. We can also open the log file and confirm here for a future reference. So we got the password. We can save it. Use it to decrypt the files later. That's what we're going to do in the next video, which is likely going to be coming out later today. We're going to go through, look at how decryption and encryption works. We're going to write our own algorithm, and we're going to decrypt a file. We're going to, we can edit a text editor. I'm not going to do like any automatic like restrictions or anything like that. We're just going to output to raw text, edit the raw text, re-encrypt it, put it back. So that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one, and have a wonderful day.